Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is a tutorial to do a better job with the PQR reading strategy for my social studies class. The first thing you want to do is know where to find the sheet in case you need to look for it later. If you go to my online academy, the very top, beginning of the year, if you just scroll down a bit, you'll see that I have this document here. So if you need to reference it later, you can easily find it in this location. Okay, the strategy is you first want to preview. You want to preview what you read before doing it. Now normally I would cover, and I'd have a PowerPoint in class, I would go over important details. But you also want to do that as a reader. Here's how to find our online textbook. I want to make sure you know how to do this as well. When you log on, under Clever, under Ed Learning, you want to find our class textbook, U.S. History, Beginnings to 1877. You may need to find it over here. But if you scroll down, you want to make sure you're in the correct year. The textbook online is set by modules. Think modules like chapters. We're currently in Chapter 5. So if you were to go and click on Module 5, you're going to have some options, okay? You're going to have some options. You're going to see these resources. Go ahead and you want to select all, and you can you have your student ebook with the online version. You can have the student edition. That would be a PDF. So the online version will look exactly like your hard copy book. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use the student edition PDF. Again, it'll look identical to what you see in your hard copy edition. So again, if I were to click on that, this information is going to come up. Now, don't worry about if we're not in this particular section. The note strategy works for anything that we read and cover in class. For the sake of discussion, we'll start with Chapter 5, Section 1. And again, this will be on the Articles of Confederation. Before anything else, before you do this strategy, okay, like I said earlier, you want to preview, the section. So you want to go through, you want to look at any kind of interesting tidbits. In this case, it's asking how you might vote if you lived in a town in New England, okay, and it deals with voting. You want to make sure to look at the big idea. You want to make sure that you look at the main ideas in this section, okay, maybe some key terms and people. Think of these key terms like a building block for a house. When it talks about Magna Carta, okay, and the next page, Constitution. These are very important concepts that you need to make sure you understand. The author does a great job by highlighting those things or bold-facing them. Okay, so you want to make sure that you pay attention to that. Remember, we're still previewing. You want to look at pictures. Okay, don't skip that. Look at the description of what's going on. That gives you a visual. Okay. If there's a map, you definitely want to take time and preview and look over the map. That way, when you get to the reading, your mind is kind of warmed up, for what you're going to see. So again, in this particular strategy, that's what preview means. All right. The next part in the strategy is a question. Now, if you were looking at your notes, again, this is over Section 1 of Chapter 5. It doesn't matter if we're in Chapter 7 or Chapter 3. Again, this is the same principle for all reading in class. You want to make sure that you go ahead and each subtopic here, you want to make sure that you turn that into a question. So ideas about government, question. You could write a question mark here. English laws in the Enlightenment, put a question mark. American models of government, question mark. Again, these sections here, they come right from the book. Okay, so ideas of government, English laws in the Enlightenment, American models of government. Again, what I've done is I put these subtopics right on your notes. Okay, so in this particular strategy, when it says to question, okay, and then to read, we've already in a sense done that. Okay, these are the questions that you want to discover. When you begin to read that particular section, remember that's your target. You want to make sure that you can correctly answer, well, what were the ideas about government? What are English laws? What is the Enlightenment? See, that's what you're reading. You're trying to identify that. That's the bullseye. Okay, you don't want to get lost in other details, and there will be other details in reading, but you want to make sure you focus on that target. All right, so in the next strategy, the PQR strategy, the PQR, that's, I call a PQR short, but preview, question, and now we're going to read. What you'd want to do is you'd want to look at the particular section. In this case, the first section would be ideas about government. You would read this. Okay, the American colonies had taken a bold step in declaring their independence from Great Britain in July 1776. Their next political goal was to form a new government. To do so, the American people drew from a wide range of political ideas. So this is a very short section. At this point, you want to go to the next step of the PQR strategy, which would be to remember. You want to summarize what you just read, okay, and you want to put that information on your note sheet. This is the summary part right here. You do not want to look at the book and just write down the words. Many students do that, and that causes problems because you don't have to think about what you're writing down. You just look and you write. You want to make sure that you turn the page, or you want to look away. So in this case, what were the ideas about government? What we just read there, we found that the Americans got their ideas from Britain. Okay, that's where they got their ideas from. The majority of the colonists were from Britain. And then again, they wanted to form a new government because they had disagreements with the British. So again, you'd want to summarize that. You might simply put, you don't have to use a complete sentence, but you'd might want to write something down in a sense. And I could go ahead and do that here. You could put down the colonists got their ideas from England. Okay, that's where they received their information. Doesn't have to be, it depends on the section. The next part of the PQR strategy, we did the remember, is we want to scan. What we want to do is we'd want to rapidly go over that reading material. Okay, we'd want to quickly read through it, just kind of bullet through, rifle through it, and then we want to see if there's anything else that we could add, details, not just any tidbits, but any information that would help us to better answer our question. What were the ideas about government? We'd want to see if there's anything that we could add that would help us to better answer that question. Again, this is how my mind is working. I might put down something like, Americans did have a wide range of political ideas. Okay? So again, we weren't all on the same page in our country. Before I go to the next section here, I want to make sure that I understand what ideas about government that section's about. If I can't answer this by looking away from my notes, I probably didn't read it to get it stuck in my brain. I'd want to make sure that I could do that. Maybe the section's longer. Maybe there's 2 paragraphs. You might need to add do another scan section. But you want to make sure that you can correctly answer that. Okay, on the PQR sheet, we've scanned. Again, any touch-up is what we did in the scan section. Okay, we added those particular details. So, provided you could fold your paper over, you just take the right side of your paper, fold it over to this line, and quiz yourself. If you can answer that, then it's time to go on to the next section. The next section in our notes talk about English laws and the Enlightenment. Okay, I'll go ahead and read that. England had limited the power of its kings and queens in 2 documents. These were the Magna Carta and the English Bill of Rights. Magna Carta, a document signed by King John in 1215, made the king subject to law. The English Bill of Rights, passed in 1689, declared the supremacy of Parliament. It kept the king or queen from changing laws without Parliament's consent. As a result, the people's representatives had a strong voice in England's government. Many Americans of this period were also influenced by the Enlightenment, a philosophical movement that emphasized the use of reason to examine old ideas and traditions. Philosopher John Locke believed that a social contract existed between political rulers and the people they ruled. Baron von Montesquieu argued that the only way to achieve liberty was through the separation of governmental powers. So again, we've got two paragraphs. This is our next notes section, the English laws and government. Again, on the PQR directions, we've already previewed the section. We know the question. The question would be English laws and government. We've already read that section. Now it's time to remember by summarizing. So you would definitely, you'd want to go ahead and turn your head or turn the page in the book, and we want to write down any kind of summary details that would help us to answer this question. You know, what were English laws in the Enlightenment? Now, when I personally look at this section, okay, I see two paragraphs. The first paragraph is about English laws. The second paragraph is about the Enlightenment. Typically, the subtopic, it's going to announce to you what you're going to read about. So you want to pay attention to that as a reader. I would think you would need at least two summary statements. One for English laws, one for the Enlightenment. So again, if we go back to our sheet, the first summary, well, what were English laws? I might go ahead and put down the Magna Carta, okay, and I'd also put down the English Bill of Rights. Okay, these are English laws that were passed previously. Okay, and again, you might want to write down they removed some power from the king. That was the point of those particular documents. Okay, because that section is two paragraphs, I would think that we're deserving of a second summary detail for the Enlightenment. Remember, we're trying to answer that question. Well, what was the Enlightenment? Okay, again, I would put down, this is all from my memory. Remember, I'm not looking at the book when I'm writing this down. This would be a movement that stressed reason for understanding. Remember, this is coming from my memory. I'm not looking in the book. Okay? Again, I might think, is there anything else I could put down for the Enlightenment? Off the top of my head, I remember reading in that particular paragraph, I might put down John Locke and Montesquieu. So again, this is all from my memory. This is not, just me looking back in the book. Okay, at this point, I want to go back, and we did the remember. Now it's time to scan. We want to go back, and we want to reread these two paragraphs again. This section, remember, our target, what are English laws? What's the Enlightenment? I'm just going to quickly read through that again, and then on my note sheet, I want to go and add any kind of scan details. Now remember, I don't want to put any details, but anything that's going to help me to better understand, what are English laws, and what would be, what is the Enlightenment, okay? And I might put down something that I remember, the king can't change laws without Parliament. Okay, that's something that I would think as a scan detail that would help me to better understand English laws. Okay, I want to put another scan detail down because remember there were two paragraphs, and I want to be able to scan and give additional information for the Enlightenment. I might put down something that I remembered reading as I scanned it. It's a social. The Enlightenment, a social contract, and that is an agreement between people and the government. Okay, that's what a social contract is. They talked about that in that particular section. And again, by doing the writing under scan, we fulfilled the touch-up. Okay, you want to follow this pattern the whole way through the reading. Okay, you want to keep doing this. Remember, at this point, before you go on to the next section, which would be American Models of Government, you want to make sure that you could take the right side of this page, fold it over, and you want to be able to ask yourself, well, what were English laws? You know, what was the Enlightenment? You want to be able to make sure that you can answer that. If you can't answer that, you want to go back and perhaps add additional scan details. Okay? The final point that I want to stress would be the plus. And the magic number to go over your reading notes would be 3 times. Okay? That's the magic number to get it fully imprinted in your brain. All right, I hope this helps. The bell just rang. Got to go. If you need any help, give me a holler. But even though this information might not cover what we're currently studying, this will give you a better understanding how to successfully do your PQR reading notes. Thanks.